As Justice Brett Kavanaugh takes his seat on the U.S. Supreme Court, the president is calling the accusations against the now justice a, quote, hoax. A hoax. Despite the fact that Trump called on Kavanaugh's accusers, called Christine Blasey Ford a credible person and a fine woman. And as the president takes aim for Democrats for what he says, what they did to Kavanaugh, he is also slamming them for what may be ahead. There is talk of impeaching the new Supreme Court justice if Democrats take control of the House come midterms. Election Day is now a month away. Here was President Trump.
The way they really tortured him and his family, I thought it was a disgrace. Now they're thinking about impeaching a brilliant jurist, a man that did nothing wrong, a man that was caught up in a hoax that was set up by the Democrats, using the Democrats' lawyers, and now they want to impeach him. I've heard this from many people. I think it's an insult to the American public. And I think you're going to see a lot of things happen on November 6th that would not have happened before. I think a lot of Democrats are going to vote Republican because I have many friends that are Democrats. The main base of the Democrats have shifted so far left that we'll end up being Venezuela.
So who will benefit from this Justice Kavanaugh backlash? Republicans, as the president's predict, or could it be Democrats, fueled by women and independents, turn off by Justice Kavanaugh's confirmation? A new poll, some of it conducted just last week, shows a slight lead for the Blue Party in battleground House districts, 50% to 46. And you see those districts in 2016 went majority Republicans. Let's go straight to our chief White House correspondent, Jim Acosta. And Jim, I want to go straight to the president's words, saying that Kavanaugh's nomination was caught up in a hoax by the Democrats, and he didn't stop there. What else did he say?
It's pretty remarkable what he's saying, Brooke, and we should point out just a few minutes before you came on the air, he was making additional comments at this law enforcement speech that he's giving down in Orlando, Florida. He was talking about the battle over Brett Kavanaugh and some of the allegations that were brought forward, and he said, quote, "It was a disgraceful situation brought about by people who are evil." And so the president is putting this in some very stark, just the most pointed terms possible. It is unclear, Brooke, whether or not the president is lumping in the accuser in that Brett Kavanaugh saga, Christine Blasey Ford, into that comment when he says that this was brought forward by people who are evil. Now, if you talk to people around the White House, inside the Republican Party, obviously people on the Democratic side, they all believed Christine Blasey Ford to the extent that she said that she was sexually assaulted, where there seems to be a huge divide, and we saw this on display during the Sunday talk shows, is that people like Susan Collins and so on say, well, while they believe Christine Blasey Ford was assaulted, they don't believe Brett Kavanaugh committed that act. But it is rather striking, Brooke, to hear the president continue this battle almost as if he wants it to continue. We're going to see some of that later on this evening when the president hosts an event over here at the White House in the East Room where Brett Kavanaugh will be brought out in front of the cameras and announced as the next Supreme Court justice. This is the victory lap that they were looking for over here at the White House. But the way that this is being framed in the most stark political terms possible, it does raise the question whether or not the president is trying to go too far with some of this rhetoric. You know, his talk of mob rule and so on. I mean, Brooke, have you been to a Trump rally? You know, you do hear rhetoric at those rallies that would conjure up images of a mob. Go back to the 2016 campaign when the president said as a candidate that he would like to punch protesters in the face and so on. And so perhaps the president knows what mob rule and mob tactics look like because he encourages them himself. Brooke?
Jim Acosta, thank you. Let's talk all about this. I've got two great voices joining me, CNN political director David Chalian and Melanie Zanona, congressional reporter for The Hill. And David, again, I just want to repeat, this is what the President of the United States has just said. That the Kavanaugh Supreme Court nomination, quote, was caught up in a hoax set up by the Democrats. Quote, the things they said about him, I don't even think he ever heard of the words. It was all made up. it was fabricated, and it's a disgrace. So when the first time I read this, how can you not instantly think of Blasey Ford and, listen, whoever you want to believe, to me that sounds like the president is saying her story is fabricated. We know civility is dead with this president, but this is disgraceful.
Well, he's clearly, as Jim was saying, trying to follow some bit of a playbook here that many Republicans were expressing on the Hill last week about Blasey Ford specifically. We do have to separate this out because I think the comments he was saying about the words he never heard was about Michael Avenatti's client, and he was referring to the third woman who came forward, Julie Swetnick. But in terms of Blasey Ford, I do think he was trying to have it both ways. He wants to, as he has said before, say that she gave compelling, credible testimony, but he doesn't want to sort of offend anyone or discredit her account, and yet he's saying it's a complete hoax. This was made up by the Democrats, and clearly he doesn't believe her version of events, and her version of events is that Brett Kavanaugh assaulted her.
Melanie, how do you interpret the president's words?
I mean, I think this just has been the GOP strategy all along. They've sought to make Kavanaugh into the victim. I mean, just look at what Lindsey Graham said the other day. I won't repeat the exact comments he said, but he basically was saying that Kavanaugh was the one who was poorly mistreated in this entire process. Republicans are really sounding the alarm, saying that your sons and your husbands and your fathers are going to be the next ones who could stand falsely accused of a sexual assault. You heard the president also say not too long ago that it's a scary time for men in America. Of course, this is a false equivalency. The rates of sexual assault are much higher than the rates of those who are being blamed falsely. But of course, this is a very effective strategy for the GOP base and for Trump supporters. Just look at the responses we've seen at the rallies when he makes these comments. When he mocked Ford, when he mocked her, he got cheers and applause. So clearly it's working, and they're digging in even just as hard after getting confirmed.
That's what I want to focus in on, right? It's the president knows what he's doing. He knows that the cries get louder. He knows midterms are 4 weeks away. David Chalian, does he think this playbook? I know he's out at 4 rallies this week. Will this work? Will this help gin up the base for everyone to show up on November 6th? Everyone, as in Republicans.
Right. I'm sure it will have some benefit on that. I have little doubt about that. Donald Trump has a pretty strong relationship with the base of the Republican Party. And you hear him out there, Brooke, when he's giving speeches, he's saying, guys, you got to act like my name is on the ballot. You have to, this election is about me. Steve Bannon, his former chief strategist, he says the battle over impeaching Donald Trump is what is on the ballot on November 6th. So they want to lean in and make this about Trump so that he can try and use some of that very strong bond he has with the base as a way to bring them out in November. And no doubt Kavanaugh is a big part of that. The concern that some Republican strategists, specifically running House races, have is that as he does that, there is the potential and perhaps likelihood to continue to disaffect independent voters, white college-educated women, suburbanites who have no patience for this at all. And that is so much of the battle for these districts where incumbent House Republicans are vulnerable.
Yep. Melanie, how do you see it? Because you could see it as, I think to David's point, those independent voters, those who are maybe on the fence, this may have the opposite effect on them, right? Or also just energizing Democrats, energizing women to say, we're not taking this.
Right, so Mitch McConnell called this a gift, and I think he's right that it's a gift in the Senate, but I think it's going to be a curse for them in the House. And that's because the Republicans are defending dozens of vulnerable seats, many of which Hillary Clinton carried in 2016. These are suburban swing districts where these independent, moderate women are a crucial voting bloc. They are already energized by the Me Too movement, fed up with Trump, and I think this whole Kavanaugh fight is just pouring gasoline on the fire. So you could really see this come back to haunt the GOP. Now, I think they might have made the calculation that the House is already gone and they might not care, and they did get the conservative Supreme Court that they wanted, and Mitch McConnell is pushing through with the reshaping of the courts, not just at the Supreme Court, but also federal judges, the district courts as well. So, you know, at the end of the day, they may have gotten the Senate GOP, they got Kavanaugh, but it might cost them the House.